I finished my cosplay of KEYLETH from Critical Role, and I'm so very excited to show you it. This truly was a labor of love and also blood, sweat, and tears, because it took about 5 months, roughly 50 hours over that time. I'm like looking at it hanging in my closet now and I'm like, oh, that's the thing I made. It's absolutely the most technically advanced cosplay I've ever done, and I'm proud of a lot of the things that I accomplished. So without further ado, I'm going to show you all of the work that went into it. First step, of course, was sketching out the design, how I want it to be. I'm not super Canon compliant, but I did take inspiration from the Canon designs because I thought that aqua green dress was really pretty and I just kind of put my own spin on it. This is the drawing that I did back in like February, March of what I wanted it to look like. I bought the fabric first and then made my design out of it. It doesn't look exactly like this. A lot of things changed, but this is the general idea. For this dress, I started by tracing a pattern off a similar dress I already own. I thought it was pointless to go and buy or print off a pattern when this dress was almost exactly the same as what I was envisioning. I only traced out the top because the skirt was basically a rectangle and I could easily do those measurements freehanded. I taped pieces of tracing paper together, laid the dress flat, and traced over the lines with a little extra for seam allowance. Then I cut the patterns out. I traced the entire back panel, but realized I could just cut one half of it on the fold, so I ended up having 2 back patterns to choose from. I used the last fabric I ever bought from Joann's, rest in peace, on this project. The first being this flannelback satin. I was worried about cutting into it because it was so pretty, but weighing it down and pinning it helped. I made 2 that go in the same direction. Redemption. They're right now. I could have prevented this by doing what I did for the back panel and folding my fabric to create 2 opposite pieces. Lesson learned. I don't think it's fully pinned right now, but there is a bodice and it's sitting the way that I wanted it to. So, stress relieved. I win. Then I did everything again in chiffon, which was far harder to navigate. Even being way down, it still slipped out of my scissors fairly often. To keep this from being a problem while I was sewing the layers together, I flatlined each piece with basting glue. This held fairly well and was easy to pull apart if something didn't line up quite right. Highly recommend this tool for slippery fabrics and beginners who don't want to line everything with a machine. Once that was done, I could assemble the top of the dress. It does just kind of fit like a vest right now because I'm wearing it over a cotton t-shirt, but on bare skin, it wraps the way that it should, but it's together. So I feel a little better about continuing on with the skirt and hemming up the sides. Probably gonna have to make a bias to do that because it's an uber tiny hem and it's already fraying a lot. So we'll see how that goes. Never forget to press your seams. I did this as I went along because I knew I'd forget if I waited until the end. I also finished the raw edges by hemming the sleeves in the round, which I am very proud of myself for doing, and using a bias strip on the neckline. Making the bias out of scrap chiffon was not my smartest move, but it made sense design-wise. I'll probably just buy bias tape and cover it if I ever do this again. However, making bias tape on your own is fairly simple. You make an uneven tube out of fabric, sew it together, and then cut it into one super long strip. Then you just put it where you need it to go. I think part of my problem was that I cut it too thinly and it wouldn't stay where I glued or pinned it. It turned out clean enough, but there were a few places where there was some nasty fraying. I wasn't sure what to do about that because seam ripping and starting over was not an option, as it had ruined everything I'd done so far, so I explored my options. Okay, so I did a burn test to see what else I could do about the fraying. The satin is at least partially cotton because it has ash on the ends. The chiffon is 100% polyester. It completely melted into plastic. So I can't burn it because I risk this being burnt. So next time I'm at a craft store, I'm just going to pick up fray check and go over everything for safekeeping. Fray check was my bestie here. I trimmed away all of those little strings and then glued those edges down. The garment smelled weird for a few hours because of this, but it was a small trade-off for no more fraying. So I had to order more skirt fabric because I ran out of the flannel back. I definitely could still make a skirt out of this, but it's not going to have the amount of gather that I want. So I got 2 yards from Fabric Wholesale Direct in nearly exactly the same color. I literally just got it 2 days ago. And it's so similar. I'm so lucky that there's only a really subtle difference. If you look closely, the Joann's dead stock is only slightly more green. This one is different though because it's bridal satin, so it has a solid back and it's sturdier and it has a similar drape. That'll be easier to see once I unfold it, but it's almost a little too sturdy for a skirt that I want to be really flowy. So I'm going to wash this with a little bit of fabric softener before I do anything to it. I'm very excited though that I now have everything and the dress will be done by the end of May. Once this new satin was clean, I could turn it into the first skirt. I did this by taking a super long thread and gathering the whole thing. Then I measured it to be the circumference of the top and spread out the gathers to match that length. Last, I tied off the thread. I did this again with the remaining chiffon, which was gathered a little less tightly than the satin because I had less of it. To combine the skirts, I placed a layer of gift bag paper between the layers to keep them in line with each other. It made fitting everything under my machine a little tricky, but it was very satisfying to tear away at the end. I got so into it that I did not record any ASMR. Sorry. Time to put the top and bottom together at last! I pinned everything together to make sure it all lined up as I'd measured it before. And then with 2 runs through the machine, at last, it had become a dress! A rather long dress, so I had to hem the bottom, and when I tried it on, I marked where I wanted the skirt to land on my legs. Y'all, I got so lucky. The mark that I made to fold the hem on is on a crease that didn't iron out completely. So I have a guideline for where it should go up to. I just need to get the hem tape and then, this is gonna be so good. Cutting super long lengths of fabric is also on my most satisfying parts of the project list because it was just so smooth. The chiffon pretty much ripped off once I decided on its length too. I settled on a layered look on the spot because it was cute, and from a distance the overall dress looked a tad short and needed some extra length. I hemmed each layer differently. I tried out this iron-on hem tape for the bottom of the satin skirt, but I couldn't really get it to work on the sides, so I just rolled those as normal. The chiffon skirt was entirely narrow-rolled hems, which I can now say that I am very good at measuring, thank you. Fray check once again came out to play here. Maybe a bit too much. I was very excited for the applique part of this dress. I found a clearance embroidered lace with leaf patterns that gave me 2 different options, but I settled on these vines because I could easily vary their length and evenly space them. I hung the dress over an exercise bike, for lack of a dress form, to sew on the skirt decorations. This took what felt like a million years, but was actually about 10 hours. I got no footage of this, so here I am pinning and gluing each piece down. Right, okay, so I didn't film any of me hand stitching the appliques onto the skirt because it took a grand total of 8 hours over 5 days, which I should have seen coming but didn't. I think they're fairly evenly spaced and the backside of the chiffon is pretty clean. There's only really one that looks kind of janky because I had to Frankenstein a couple pieces of thread together because I didn't cut it long enough at first. And it definitely got faster as time went on, as I got into the swing of things. Like the first one took nearly an hour to get on, and then I just got better at it. The top decorations were so much harder. I tried to hand sew them on. Wouldn't stay put. I tried the iron-on tape. Wouldn't attach properly. After a good cry, I just machine sewed it on. I was so against doing this because I thought it'd look ugly and unclean, but honestly, you can only tell it was done that way from the backside. Okay, not bad. I like how it looks right now. I might have to make a couple of alterations before I, wear it anywhere. But it's structurally sound, it looks pretty. I definitely have to wear a different undergarment with it because it's very low cut, but it's done. Are we seeing the vision now? Because I sure am. I think it's going to look really cool when I have all of the props and stuff. So, next steps. Antler headband, finish the mantle, and make the spire of conflux, hopefully. And I ideally would like this all to be done by August, so I don't have to crunch for CC or the Red Fair. I used gold jewelry wire to make the circlet and wrap them around my head to get the right length. Then I bent it into my design. I wanted a little loop on the front enclosed between the 2 bands because it seemed very elven princess, you know? It's held together mainly by wrapping the wires around each other with just a dab of hot glue here and there for reinforcements. I think it's so pretty as is, but who is KEYLETH without her antlers? I measured pieces that weren't too long as the main structure, and then twisted some tinier bits of wire around to be the offshoots. They would not stay still as I played with them, but this gave me the opportunity to easily play around with different alignments and make them symmetrical. Once I had a shape I was satisfied with, I built up the structure with oven-baked clay. It's pretty nice looking as is, but when I went to bake, it burned ever so slightly, so I had to paint it over. I wanted to make them gold to match the other accents of the outfit anyways, so I started with a bone-colored base layer and then added the shiny stuff. Once those were dry, I could twist them onto the circlet. To cover up the excess wire and glue, I decorated the headpiece with flowers and leaves. Fun fact, these were extras from the Airy Zero book nook all the way back in 2023. Never throw things away, folks. You will always find a use for them. Overall, this part was the easiest bit, and I could easily reproduce it if something were to break. I loved having something simple to do in between all of the harder parts, and it's just so pretty. Listen, I had a plan for this staff. I thought I was going to make the main structure out of tinfoil and air-dry clay, and I had a very nice shape going for me. I even had my brother help me film progress of this part to show off how cool it was looking when I had just started. This plan went to shit so fast. The very next day, the structure cracked and caved in on itself. Thankfully, I already had a plan B. The new base was a floral foam circle, which I think is used to make wreaths. I cut out a chunk to mimic the shape I was originally going for and then stuck it onto a wooden dowel. I initially tried to taper the ends down, but floral foam is very hard to carve and sand cleanly. I wish I knew this before starting to tear this thing up. But it did create the effect of choppy, broken, torn off wood like how a beaver would chew it. Not the effect I was going for, but a neat one nonetheless, so I pivoted to make that idea the new game plan. Between my foam frustrations, I tried my hand at papercraft to create a floating crystal. I copied a paper D20 pattern from online, partially because it was an easy shape, and partially for that Dungeons & Dragons reference. I retraced it larger onto the back of this glitter paper, cut it out, flipped it over, and folded it up. I managed to get all of the faces fairly even. The only one that didn't quite match up right was at the top. That was where I added the fishing wire to give the floating illusion. After making a glued knot, I folded the last faces of the shape around the wire. I carved a small channel on the top of the staff to place the wire so it wasn't jutting out or slipping off, and tied the crystal into place. Then I could continue turning foam into wood. I used my X-Acto knife to score the foam and make a wood grain texture, or at least something akin to it. There was no rhyme or reason to how I went about this. Once it was carved, I coated the foam with a thin layer of Mod Podge to prime the surface for the paint job. At this point, I realized that the gap between the foam and the wood looked off, so I reused some of that air-dry clay to even the area out. I also stuck some paper scraps inside of it to make like there were even more tiny crystal bits inside. This staff is 5 feet tall, so I had to bend into some odd positions to paint it, but paint it I did. I had to mix my own color paint to paint the broken wood parts and thought that was neat, so you get bonus footage of that. I stuck on a few more crystal bits, and this absolute beast of a prop was finally done. I spent the most time on the cape because I started it, put it away for a long time, and then pulled it out again. I began by cutting a half-circle skirt out of the same embroidered lace that I used for the applique, but measured it to sit around my shoulders. The only clasps I could scavenge from the remains of Joanne's were silver, so I painted this one gold to match before tacking it on. It's a subtle difference. From a distance, you can't really tell I did this, so I'm glad that it blends in so well. After a brief time skip, fabric maple leaves became available in stores, so I bought a ton of them, sorted them out, and began to paint them gold one by one. I very quickly learned how messy this part was and put a paper towel shield on my table. It took about 2 layers for each leaf to reach the amount of gold I needed. By the end, I had this process down pat and had what I call a leaf assembly line going. I made a grand total of 90 leaves, and each of them looked slightly different, so I sorted them out again based on what color they were originally. I laid my cape out and began to sort the leaves into how I wanted to arrange them. I tried to add a little bit of a gradient, at least what I could of one with what I had. I managed to use every single leaf in the structure, and because there were so many, I pinned and sewed each layer on one at a time. Alright, this is just layer 1. And it makes fun sounds, because it's really crinkly. And there's gonna be a million more. Thus began several more hours of sewing, pinning, and pinning, and sewing again. It was quite monotonous and also took 10 hours. But at the end, I had a rustly autumn cape, so it was worth it. So, quick recap. I cried a little bit putting that entire thing on and looking in the mirror at myself and seeing the work that I accomplished, because I'm just so proud that I managed to pull that off. I never in a million years thought I would have the skills to make something like that, and now that I do, it's a little surreal. I am endlessly proud of that cape and that headpiece specifically. I feel like those are the strengths of that outfit, and they're what stand out the most, and they're just the most visually appealing to look at. I feel like a princess when I have those on. I'm happy that the dress actually fit on the first try and I didn't have to rip it all apart a dozen times and try to completely reassemble it, and I basically had to make no alterations once I had all of the pieces together. What did not go well? The insane amount of fraying that chiffon has. I should have just French seamed every place where chiffon and satin connected, and I didn't do that, and this dress probably isn't going to last as long as I would like because of it, but that's what all of that fray check is for. I am a little concerned how long this will hold up because I am performing in this dress, and I haven't tested out much movement other than the stuff that I did in the reveal footage. So I'm gonna take it to the dress rehearsal for the masquerade that I'm doing it in and see if there's anything I need to last minute alter before I do that full performance, because there's a lot of little moving parts and I want to make sure that it all works. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I began work on this literally at the beginning of the year, and now we are nearing the end. So to see my growth, all the things that I accomplished, to finally accumulate into one project has been incredibly satisfying, and I hope that you guys also like the look of it, because I sure do. So thank you for watching. Hit all the buttons, like and subscribe, comment. Please comment, tell me I did a good job. And I will see you whenever the next video is. This took so long to make.